Lane, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
Lane,
Aloha.
aloha. Absolutely, man. So you're calling all the way from the snowy banks of Oahu, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a little cool this morning, but 70 something degrees
Oh,
still.
stop
Yeah.
it. Well, we're recording this like around Christmas time. So, it's also a tropical paradise here in Chicago where we're calling in from. So, but hey, let's jump in, man. So you started your financial journey uh, in that Hawaiian paradise. Tell me the story. Take us to where you started making your own money and then walk us through where you are today.
Yeah, so my first job, as we were talking earlier, was picking pineapples for 7.50 an hour. It was sort of child uh, slavery level type of work.
Right?
And I saved that money to buy, the deal was I had to save half the money and put it into a Roth account because even at that point, my parents had the hindsight to know what the heck a Roth account was back in the 1990s. So I put it there, and that was where things kind of started. It's just, and that kind of just indicative of like the way I grew up, right? You save, you work hard. I eventually went to school to be an engineer, and then I graduated, and then kind of saved up for that first property that I was never living in because I was working all the time on the road for my job,
Hmm.
and I turned it into a rental, and that was the start of it all.
What did you learn in that first rental that you wish other first time investors would already know?
The taste of blood, my friend. It it I bought it for 350 with a $80,000 down payment. The mortgage was 1,600 a month, and the rents that got brought in were 2,200 a month. So 2,200 minus 1,600. I didn't know anything about keeping money aside for expenses or capex, but all I knew as an early 20-year-old kid was that was a heck of a lot of beer money. And that was
Hmm.
just cash flow alone, not including mortgage pay down, appreciation, tax benefits. And I was
Hmm.
like, I got to do this again and again to get myself out of this rat race.
Yeah. And so you have, man. So I want to know one, how you socked together 80 grand for that down payment at such a young age. That's pretty awesome. Because that's more than a couple of dollars from some pineapples. And so was that just from your wages or had you other savings from before that?
Yeah, I did some internships during college that I paid off my student loans pretty
All right.
quickly.
Good man.
And I may look 18, but I'm 34 years old today. So back then, student loans weren't that bad, right? It's not
Hmm.
as crazy as today. So that was
Absolutely.
actually possible. But yeah, I just, my starting salary was like 60, 70 grand out of college. And I just saved all of that essentially. I just ate ramen noodles and lived off the company dime as they traveled me around the country 100% of the time.
Awesome. So as of today, your notes say here that you've got $230 million of capital construction projects in public and private sector. Um, that was in the work that you managed as an engineer. Is that right?
Yeah, different private and public sector jobs. But yeah, I've left that life behind. No more W-2 anymore. Full-time investor.
Cool. All right. So tell me what your financial life looks like today, what you like about it, what it's changed about you, and your now that you've left the rat race, so to speak. Just sort of paint the picture of where life is today.
Yeah, there's this thing we talk about a lot, right? FI, financial independence, when
Hmm.
your income exceeds your expenses from your passive investments. And I
Hmm.
crossed over that point recently, and um,
Congratulations.
it actually does happen, right? But it takes a
Hmm.
really long time to do. It
Hmm.
took me about a dozen years, but yeah, now I get to live a life of choice as opposed to obligation of having to go and dress up and put pants on and go to the office to do a stupid meeting that nothing gets done, to interact with
Hmm.
people that just want to create more work. I do projects that I want to do. I do my podcasts, I invest in deals, and I wake up whenever I want.
Hmm. How do you know what deals to invest in? What are some of your metrics for picking the right things? What kind of real estate do you want to get into? I mean, it's a huge universe, syndication, rental properties, flips, buying on terms. Tell us what your specialty is. What do you like to do? What's in your real estate portfolio?
Yeah, so I started buying properties, just single family homes, just to get started when I didn't have that much money. But for the most part, I focus in on more recession-proof assets that are like for workforce housing. So your class B and C type of housing in secondary and tertiary markets where the income you bring in, the rental income you bring in will exceed the expenses and the mortgage payments, and thus you get cash flow.
And you say
So
recession resistant because folks got to live somewhere. When the market tanks, folks typically move from the high end luxury apartments or whatever down to a class B or C where they're still comfortable, but it's not a down neighborhood, but it's, you know, a little rough around the edges, but it still produces an income. They get the nice place to stay. You get the cash flow even when markets turn. Is that right?
right, right. Most people in America, don't make over $60,000 a year. They spend about $600 to $900 a month in rent, and those
Mm-hmm.
are the people that are doing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was living in Seattle, and I think for a lot of my California clients and Hawaii clients, they get huge sticker shock. Like you can buy $100,000 house that's like rents for $1,000, and that's pretty good, better than average. It's like, yeah, we buy those all day long.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So stepping back for a minute, why did you choose real estate as opposed to a bunch of basket of mutual funds and 401k and all that? The average way to invest. You know, if the average financial investor or advisor was on this podcast, he or she would be like, well, you know, just buy some term insurance, invest in the market, hope and pray that the market goes up. It's going to do 12% a year. Don't you know that? You know, Dave Ramsey must tell it, so it must be true. How is it that you chose real estate and turned your back on, you know, the stock market and traditional retirement plans?
Yeah, I mean, I withdrew my entire 401k maybe about a handful of years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. But in the beginning, when I was just out of college for 4 or 5 years, I was putting almost the max in there every year, like a little boy, like how I was told. But numbers don't lie, right? I mean, even in a bull market, like my real estate, just the returns on that exceeded much more. I think when you're investing in retail investments, such as the Wall Street stuff, there's so much middlemen taking money out of there, and they get paid
Mm-hmm.
regardless if you make money. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
12%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It's more like 8%. But when you're investing in real estate, you're cash flowing that 8 to 15%. And that's not including mortgage pay down, tax benefits, and any appreciation you're getting on leveraged properties. So that's where you can possibly 3, 4x that 8 to 10% that you get in the stock market. So it took me a really long time because you're conditioned, through society that, don't take money out of your retirement account, right? Stay to the 401k. But numbers don't lie. I chose to get off that path a long time ago. And, look, I mean, I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
day job now. It works.
Mm-hmm. And you currently control over 3,000 units across, looks like mostly the Southeast, a little bit up the Midwest there, Washington State as well. And then you've got a few rentals in Alabama, Birmingham area. So it's working, whatever's happening, right? And I don't hear you regretting dumping that, whatever it was, 401k or whatever. Let's talk a little bit about your exposure and use of a bank on yourself type whole life policy, you know, infinite banking, bank on yourself. Can you tell me why that's an important part of your portfolio, how that fits in to the real estate world?
Yeah. Yeah. So for a lot of more affluent investors, $500,000 net worth and above, certainly the accredited guys, who have a net worth of $1 million or over, like to use a whole life insurance banking policy where you optimize the liquidity and cash value, not so much for the death payout, or the interest rate. It allows us to kind of flex our own money. And the way I use it, I call it an opportunity fund. So not to be confused with opportunity zone fund investing, which I'm not a big fan of, but opportunity, like, when I go into deals today, I go into private placements, typically $50,000 minimum investments, and they come out sporadically, right? I only go after the good deals I like, which isn't every month or every 3 months or anything like that. It's very sporadic. So I need to have some kind of a mechanism for me to hold on money, make a little bit of a yield that's tax free, and sheltered from litigators, and then go into that deal. And maybe there's a deal right after each other, right? I need a little bit of a buffer. So that's how I kind of use this as sort of my opportunity fund.
Well, you said a few things there I want to touch on, but I like that you refer to it as an opportunity fund. Most people, the traditional financial planners, again, would say, let's have 3 to 6 months of emergency fund. And that's where life is sort of wrapped around emergencies. You go from one emergency to the next. But Lane, you're describing an opportunity fund, and I've referred to the policies the exact same way. So I think we're right on track there. It is an emergency fund for sure if you needed it, but more importantly, it's your contingency cash for opportunities. It's a big bucket of liquid money that you can draw on when you see an opportunity. So very cool. Talk to me about litigation protected. I think you used a phrase similar to that. How is this maybe better than your money just sitting in a checking account in terms of just lawsuit protection? As a real estate investor, as a landlord, I assume that lawsuits are a dime a dozen for you. In fact, I heard a statistic, and you might know this better than I would, Lane, that over a 20-year period, 9 out of 10 real estate investors have at least one lawsuit on their desk.
Right. It's not a matter of if, but when, right? Another reason why I'm moving more towards, I'm selling off my single family homes, my direct investments, and getting out of being a landlord and more being an investor on the LP side. And that's the beauty of being an LP. You got limited liability.
Absolutely.
But it's a transition once you become more of an affluent investor and it's funny, like it gets, investing and wealth management gets easier and simpler as your net worth goes up. But using the infinite banking policy, the whole life policy, is a ways of stuffing some cash somewhere. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know like how it really works. But as they told me, it's sort of off the table, similar to how your 401k is off the table of litigators. But like we said before, the 401k isn't going to get you anywhere. It's just going to make the companies rich.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's some state by state lawsuit protections of life insurance cash values, along with retirement accounts to some degree as well. But there's some of the other limits that you already brought up about 401ks, IRAs. What about, do you have an opinion on self-directed IRAs relative to whole life insurance as a place to do real estate investing? Do you have an opinion about that one way or the other? A lot of people will come to us saying, well, hey, should I do infinite banking or bank on yourself type policies or self-directed IRAs? I got an idea or two, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yeah,
You
I
do
like
both?
the infinite banking a little bit better. I'm not a big fan of the self-directed IRA or self-directed Roths, because a lot of the deals that I go into, we do cost segregations on the deal. So we get a huge chunk of the depreciation up front.
Say some more about
And
that. Some of the tax advantages like cost segregation are not available in a self-directed IRA.
right, it's non-qualified money, and you're going to have to pay UBIT or UDFI tax on that leverage portion. It's kind of a hit. So you might as well use non-qualified money for investing in bigger deals or even direct real estate. But maybe I'll explain like cost segregations a little bit
Yeah,
for the
please go
folks.
for
So
it.
like, most people who are investing in real estate understand that you're able to depreciate the value of the property over 27 years at a straight line depreciation.
Okay, so like on your tax return, you're able to buy that. Give us a quick, like a rough sketch of an example so folks can follow along.
Yeah, so just to use some rough numbers off the top of my head, that Seattle property that was worth 350, you're able to take the building property, not the land, just the building value, divided by 27 years. And I believe I was able to take like $7,000 depreciation every year for 27 years, which is awesome because that brings your income down quite a bit. But that's fine and dandy all, but it pales in comparison to when you do a cost segregation. You're using the new tax laws of bonus depreciation. So in a lot of these deals, we're able to write off a huge portion of that asset all in year one.
So of that
So
$350,000 Washington property, even a round number of what you're able to write off in that first year?
Uh, it's hard to say, but I would say maybe about 100 to $200,000. Boom, year one.
Amazing.
Boom.
Yep. That's
I
what
mean,
we're seeing. And that's cost segregation adds to that too, right?
yeah, yeah, and that's just something that like a lot of the mom and pop investors that are still investing in rental properties here and there aren't getting because it costs 5, 10 grand to do a cost segregation. So if your asset is not worth $1 million or more, that's just not worth it. But when you're
hmm
going into these bigger apartment syndications, that's 5, 10, $20 million, it totally makes sense.
Right. So
And all
back
the
to
tax benefits go down to the LPs the same.
it gets passed along to the LPs, those passive investors like yourself. So awesome. Okay, so back to self-directed IRAs and life insurance. A weird combination of things to discuss on this show, but it's I think important, right? So first of all, you've got the trouble of how do you get enough money into a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA in order to have enough money to do a large deal like you just described, million plus whatever property or multi-million-dollar property. But then you lose inside the IRAs. You're saying you lose a lot of those tax advantages, like accelerated depreciation, cost segregation. If it's in the IRA, all you get is tax deferral,
Right. And
basically.
every situation is different, right? Like the guys I work with are mostly higher paid professionals. They have a high active income,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to mitigate their income today to get them into the nice 15% range or so.
Right.
Therefore, we'd rather get those deductions today. So therefore, to do that, we don't invest via retirement vehicles.
Yeah, being more hands-on with your investment, like directly investing versus using retirement vehicles, you get more tax advantages, like you've been describing. One other
Right.
thing that I've really found is a big problem with self-directed IRAs is that there's still a required minimum distribution in retirement. So most folks, Lane, you probably know this, but most folks may not know that there's a required distribution on your IRA that has to come out once you hit your early 70s. And they, with self-directed, if there's real estate in that IRA, that real estate must be reappraised every single year, which adds a ton of costs, to if you got 50 properties or 100 doors in there. And they force you to liquidate the real estate to pay that RMD if you don't have the cash flow for it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
mhm.
me being in my 30s and even for my clients in their young 50s, I mean, you got a lot of years to get to the RMD period. And it just, if you do the math, right? I would say people do the math, the numbers don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
The money leverage and you getting the tax benefits today to lower your taxable income today was probably going to likely be greater than keeping it in a retirement account, supposedly with these tax shelters. But yeah, it's a very counterintuitive way, right? You're conditioned. No, no, Mark, you can't do that. You can't dip into your retirement account.
Right. Well, so you use life insurance, and I'm sure you look when you tell that to folks, people look at you funny. Why do you use life insurance as a place for your opportunity fund? Why not just use your checking account, savings? What is it about the life insurance that you would prefer over just paying cash for deals? And or, I'm sure you use a mixture of bank debt and other things, but why do you use these policies to help you with your real estate portfolio?
Well, yeah, the litigation protection, like we said, making a little bit of a yield. I think I get like 4%, but that's tax free. And then also when I withdraw the money and take a loan, I'm using it for business, And then you're saying you used a little bit to take a vacation, but as far as I'm concerned, every time I take money out of that thing, it's for business. Therefore, it's a business expense, and I get to
There you
write that
go.
thing off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were going to go on that vacation anyway. And by the way, we went to your beautiful shores in Hawaii there for that trip. But we use it for, real estate investing, business investments, things that create cash, right? So you're using that and that provides you some additional, what does it do for you? What is it specifically that using the life insurance has allowed you to do with your real estate portfolio?
It's able to smooth out my liquidity. I mean, obviously, I don't want to have too much liquidity, right? I mean, if you, as an investor, you're trying to get your equity working for you. most investors have dead lazy equity in their properties or other rental properties or their primary residence. You got to get that working. But what I've done is I've kind of stripped the equity out of all my assets, and then I kind of use it as a one holding place in my life insurance, so I can watch that thing like a hawk. And I mean, I don't know if I really need more than $200,000 or more of liquidity, right? And that's the point that I know that I have too much, and I need to start investing it.
That's great. Very good. And you've gone from 12 single family homes to thousands in a short period of time, from 2015 to 2018. How do you pick your deals? How do you raise money? How do you syndicate these deals? What are you looking for? And how do you scale from 12 to a couple thousand in that short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I just go in passive into these larger deals, and they just happen to pick up 300 units at a time, and it gets easier. And I don't have to do anything. The general partners take care of all the work. But these days, I'm part of the general partnership because I've been in so many deals, and I kind of bring my Rolodex and my investors with me. How do I pick deals? Well, I put it through my analyzer, and I get the rent rolls, the P&Ls. I see if it's making money today before we buy it. And then I run my comps, and I do my own due diligence myself. And but that's half of it. The other half is the people who you're working with. One rule I have is never work with anybody you don't know, like, or trust. I've lost 40 grand working with unscrupulous character before, and only go off of referrals.
Yeah, boy, it's hokey to say your net work is your net worth, but it's so true. The more you can develop good friendships with people that you respect, you're going to win by default almost. There's the net worth, the BMI average, the health, the longevity, the happiness quotient. It's all going to be averaged out by your 5 closest folks, they say. And I've learned that to be true. What would you say? Has that been the case in your story as well,
I
Lane?
totally agree. I mean, I think when you're under $500,000 net worth, you got to grind, right? I mean, it took me to buy my first property in 2009 and get up to 11 properties took me like dang near 6-7 years. I could probably have done a little quicker if I knew what I knew now, but like at that point, my growing my network at that point really didn't matter. I just needed to get my net worth up there. But $500,000 or more, or even $100,000 net worth and more, it's all your network.
So we've talked about 3 keys to success, and I'm going to summarize them so far, Lane. And then I want to hear at least one more that we haven't already touched on, and you can pick anything you want. I heard you say that the bank on yourself type whole life policy is a key asset in your portfolio for big buckets of opportunity money. Smart tax advantages in the real estate space specifically. It's almost like the government has given us a series of incentives to do certain things with our money. You're not going to get a tax advantage for having your money in credit card debt. You can't write off the interest on your credit cards. You can write off the interest on, and a lot of other things in real estate. Your carpet, your home repairs, the accelerated depreciation. So that was the second thing, taxes. Third asset in your tool belt is your friends, your family, your connections, your Rolodex. What's another one that you feel like has brought you to the success you're at today?
I mean, just keep buying things where the income exceeds the expenses and then some. I mean, if you keep doing that, that's the basic, right? That's if a recession comes and then you have to drop the rents, you'll be fine. Don't get cash flow investing confused with what the people were doing in The Big Short, buying spec houses or flipping houses with their pants down. You don't want to get caught with that. Cash flow is king. Cash flow is what allows you to go after the next opportunity and the next one.
Awesome. Very good. What can you leave with our listeners so that they can chase you down, learn more about what you've got to offer, Lane?
They can check out my podcast, Simple Passive Cashflow, found on iTunes and Google Play. In the beginning, it was mostly me picking up turnkey rental, single family homes, but obviously my strategy has changed over the years, doing more private placements and syndications for affluent investors.
So that's simplepassivecashflow.com?
Yeah, and my email is lane@simplepassivecashflow.com. And thanks for having me, Mark.
Awesome, man. Well, you're we're all watching you. We're all hoping for your best success. And I'm sure there'll be some folks from today's episode who want to learn more using their own bank on yourself policies, or if they don't have one yet, getting started and using their policy for projects and strategies that you can show and teach. And you've got a mastermind group too, your tribe. Do you want to share anything about that as well?
Yeah, I have a passive investor accelerator. We do Zoom calls bi-weekly, and it's just a good group of, it's a smaller group of 50, 60 people who are all high paid professionals, short on time. So like we said, your network is your net worth. I mean, it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel with people just like in your situation.
So we just found a way for you, our listener, to be a part of the network that Lane is building. So that's an incredible offer asset strategy to dive deeper and to build your financial wealth by building your connections and friendships and partnerships. So Lane, I want to thank you very much for being on our show today, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
All right. Thanks for having me, Mark.